The millionaire's daughter was shunned by everyone at the party, but what the cleaning lady did left everyone paralyzed. Secrets came to light, and their lives changed forever. A story of overcoming and love that will touch your heart. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment on where you are watching from. The echo of high heels on the marble floor of the mansion in Beverly Hills resonated through the main hall like a metronome marking the rhythm of tension. The lights from the 3 imported bohemian crystal chandeliers created golden reflections on the walls covered in French wallpaper, where paintings by Brazilian masters silently observed the guests moving in select groups. The intense aroma of orchids, brought especially from Napa Valley for the occasion, mingled with the expensive perfume of the socialites and the refined bouquet of wines circulating on silver trays. Beatrice Smith contemplated that universe of appearances from the top of the curved staircase leading to the second floor of the mansion. At 28, she possessed a subtle beauty that went unnoticed amid the artificial glow of that environment. Her wavy brown hair fell naturally over her shoulders, without the geometric cuts that dictated fashion among elite women. Her honey-colored eyes reflected a sharp intelligence, but also a deep melancholy that she had learned to hide behind timid smiles and lowered gazes. "Look who decided to show up," murmured Patricia Smith, Beatrice's stepmother, to a group of friends near the mahogany bar. The 45-year-old woman wore a Valentino dress that cost more than many Americans earn in a year, and her platinum blonde hair was styled in a flawless bun that highlighted the Harry Winston jewelry, borrowed especially for the occasion. "I hope she doesn't pull any of her dramatic scenes today. Robert is very nervous." With the investors present, Robert Smith, the patriarch of the family and founder of Smith Developments, circulated among the guests with the ease of someone who built a real estate empire brick by brick. At 65, he still maintained an upright posture and a penetrating gaze that intimidated even the most experienced businessman in Los Angeles. His Armani tuxedo was impeccable, and the Rolex Submariner on his wrist caught the light from the chandeliers with every hand movement as he gestured, explaining the details of the company's latest project to a group of international investors. Smith Developments has completed 50 years revolutionizing the urban landscape of Los Angeles, Robert said with his usual enthusiasm. "Our high-end residential projects have transformed entire neighborhoods, enhancing not only the properties, but the entire surrounding area." Beatrice slowly descended the marble steps, trying to go unnoticed. Her elegant but understated white silk dress from a designer brand was chosen deliberately not to draw attention. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the small leather clutch, a gift from her late mother. With each step, she felt the weight of the judging gazes of the guests, who knew her more from social tabloids than for her personal qualities. At the back of the hall, near the entrance to the gourmet kitchen, Mary Johnson quietly organized the cleaning cart. At 52, she possessed a natural elegance that no navy blue uniform could hide. Her grey hair was tied in a simple bun, and her brown eyes observed everything around her with the wisdom of someone who learned to read people through their actions, not their words. There was something maternal in her presence, a calmness that contrasted with the artificial excitement of that environment. Mary had worked in the mansion for 15 years since she arrived. In Los Angeles, from a small town in the Midwest, she knew every corner of that house, every secret whispered in the hallways, every tear shed in empty rooms. She had seen Beatrice grow from a shy teenager into a brilliant young woman, but tormented by insecurities that seemed to have deep roots in the early loss of her mother and the constant comparison with her older sister Isabella, who had died in a car accident at 25. Isabella was always special, the guests would say. What a shame Beatrice didn't inherit her sister's personality. As Mary discreetly collected the used glasses left on the French consoles, She noticed Beatrice approaching the group where her father was. The young woman took a deep breath, gathering courage to join the conversation when one of the investors, a burly man with a New York accent, made a comment that changed the atmosphere entirely. "Robert, I heard your daughter graduated in architecture from a local university. Doesn't she work for the company? It would be interesting to have a female perspective in the projects." The silence that followed was awkward. Robert forced a tight smile as Beatrice approached, her cheeks flushing with anticipated embarrassment. "Beatrice is very sensitive for the real estate market," Robert replied, not looking directly at his daughter. "She prefers to dedicate herself to artistic hobbies." "Dad, I would like to be more involved in the company's projects," Beatrice said, her voice coming out quieter than she intended. "I have some ideas about sustainability that could—" "Dear," Patricia interrupted, appearing like a perfumed hurricane next to her husband, "let's not bore our guests with technical talks. Why don't you go get some fresh air in the garden?" Her stepmother's words felt like a slap in the face. Beatrice felt all the certainty she had gathered over the weeks evaporate. Her eyes welled up, but she fought against the tears. "Not here, not in front of everyone." "Excuse me," she murmured, quickly turning to leave. It was then that it happened. In her haste to escape the humiliating situation, Beatrice didn't realize that the hem of her dress had caught on her heel. The fabric stretched, she lost her balance, and her arms flailed uncontrollably, trying to grab onto something. The glass of red wine she was holding flew towards. As she looked at her own dress, a dark stain spread, like ink on paper. The sound of the fall echoed through the hall like thunder. All conversations stopped. 200 pairs of eyes turned towards the scene. Beatrice was sitting on the marble floor, her white dress now stained red, her hair disheveled, looking around like a lost child. "My God," someone whispered. "What a shame," murmured another. "Poor Robert and Patricia," commented a third voice. The collective whisper grew like ocean waves, creating a cruel murmur that seemed to echo off the walls. Beatrice tried to get up, but her hands slipped on the smooth marble. The humiliation was complete, absolute, devastating. It was then that Mary abandoned her cleaning cart. Her steps were firm and determined as she crossed the hall towards the fallen young woman. There was no hesitation in her movements, nor shame in interrupting an elite party while wearing a cleaning uniform. She knelt beside Beatrice with the naturalness of a mother caring for her daughter. "Calm down, my angel," Mary said softly, extending her hands to help Beatrice up. "Accidents happen to everyone." Beatrice looked up, finding the understanding gaze of Mary. Here was someone who did not judge her, who did not see her as a disappointment or a family embarrassment. She saw only a person in need of help. With careful movements, Mary helped Beatrice to her feet. Then, without hesitation, she removed her own uniform jacket and placed it over the young woman's shoulders, covering the wine stain. The gesture was followed by an even deeper silence than before. Now, there were no whispers, only stunned gazes directed at the two women in the center of the hall. Mary turned to the guests, her chin raised with dignity, and declared in a loud, clear voice, "A stain on a dress does not define anyone's character, but people's reactions to seeing it do." The words echoed through the hall like a direct challenge to everyone present. Robert turned pale. Patricia's eyes widened, shocked by the employee's boldness. The guests remained paralyzed, unsure how to react to the public reprimand from a cleaner. Beatrice looked at Mary with a gratitude that went beyond words. In that moment, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Someone had fought for her, had risked themselves to protect her. It was a new, powerful, transformative feeling. The hall remained in a deathly silence for long seconds, as if everyone were processing what had just happened. The 50-year anniversary of Smith Enterprises would be remembered, but not for the reasons Robert had planned. Chapter 2. The silence in the hall was broken by the sound of Patricia's heels marching furiously toward Mary and Beatrice. Her face, usually controlled by years of Botox and cosmetic procedures, was contorted in an expression of anger that revealed her true nature. "How dare you speak like that to our guests?" Patricia's voice came out like a venomous hiss. "Have you forgotten your place in this house?" Mary stood firm, her arms still protectively around Beatrice's shoulders. "My place is where I see someone in need of help, Mom." Robert approached with long strides, his face red with embarrassment. The international investors watched the scene with expressions ranging from curiosity to discomfort. This was not the kind of drama they expected to witness at a high society party in Los Angeles. "Mary, you're fired," Robert declared in a low voice, but it echoed through the hall like a hammer striking. "Take your things and leave immediately." "No!" Beatrice's voice surprised everyone, including herself. For the first time in years, there was strength in her speech. "She was just helping me. It's not fair to fire her for that." Robert turned to his daughter, his eyes blazing with anger. "Do you think we don't have enough problems? Now you want to defend the insubordination of an employee?" Dr. Edward Miller, one of the most respected investors present, a 70-year-old man with completely white hair and gold glasses, stepped closer to the group. His imposing presence made everyone fall silent. "Robert, perhaps it would be better to resolve this privately," he suggested diplomatically, observing the other guests who pretended not to be paying attention. "This kind of situation can be misinterpreted." Patricia seized the opportunity. "Of course, Edward. Mary, you have 5 minutes to leave the property. Security!" She waved to the discreet security personnel stationed at the entrances of the hall. Mary looked one last time at Beatrice, her eyes conveying a silent message of strength. "Remember what I told you, girl. Character shows in difficult moments." She turned with dignity and walked toward the service exit, followed by the security guards. Beatrice felt as if a part of her was being torn away. The only person who had cared enough to defend her was being expelled because of her. The guilt was overwhelming. "Now go to your room and change," Robert ordered in a low voice, just for her to hear, "and don't come back down here today." Beatrice ascended the stairs like a ghost, each step feeling like a mountain. In her room, a space decorated in shades of beige and antique pink that always felt more like a hotel suite than a home, she sat in front of the Louis XV vanity mirror. The wine stain on her dress had spread even more, creating abstract patterns like an accidental work of art. She touched the navy jacket still draped over her shoulders. The simple fabric smelled of coconut soap and fabric softener, a stark contrast to the expensive perfumes that permeated her life. It was a scent of honesty, of hard work, of dignity built through effort. That night, after the last guests departed in their imported cars, the mansion returned to the oppressive silence that Beatrice knew all too well. She stayed awake late, looking out the window, from her room to the lights of Los Angeles that stretched infinitely. Somewhere in that metropolis was Mary, probably worried about her professional future. The next morning, Robert called Beatrice for breakfast on the terrace. The glass table was set with English porcelain and crystals that reflected the golden light of the rising sun. The garden in the back, designed by a landscape architect decades ago, showcased its imperial palms and bromeliads in all their tropical glory. "We need to talk about yesterday," Robert said, methodically cutting his whole grain toast. He was wearing a burgundy silk robe that cost $3,000, and his grey hair was perfectly styled even at that early hour. "Dad, Mary didn't do anything wrong," Beatrice began, nervously playing with the strawberries on her plate. "Wrong?" Robert slammed the knife down forcefully. "She humiliated our family in front of the top investors in Los Angeles. Do you have any idea of the damage this could cause?" "She defended me when no one else did," Beatrice retorted, her voice rising in intensity. "Not even my own father." The slap came quick and precise, leaving a red mark on Beatrice's cheek. Robert had never raised his hand to her before, but the tension that had built up after the party had exploded. "You have no right to question me," he said, panting. "I built all of this," he gestured to the mansion around them, "for you, for our family, and you want to throw it all away because of a housekeeper?" Beatrice touched her stinging cheek, tears streaming down her face. But for the first time, they were not just tears of pain or shame. There was something more. Anger. "My mother would be ashamed of you," she said, rising from the table. Robert paled. The name of Helena, his first wife, was rarely mentioned in the house since her death 15 years ago. "Don't mention your mother." In this conversation, his voice came out dangerously low. "Why not? Because she loved me for who I am, because she saw potential in me instead of just flaws." Beatrice was trembling but continued. "She would have stood by me yesterday." "Your mother is dead," Robert exploded, "and you need to live in the real world. A world where actions have consequences, where reputation matters, where a 50-year-old company can crumble because of a pathetic scene." Patricia appeared on the terrace, wearing a Lululemon yoga outfit, seemingly heading to her morning class at the local athletic club. She assessed the tension in the air with the experience of someone who had navigated turbulent social waters for decades. "Beatrice, dear," she said with false sweetness, "perhaps it's time for you to consider that clinic in Switzerland we talked about. A time for you to find yourself." The clinic in Switzerland. Beatrice knew it was an elegant euphemism for a retreat for the elite who needed to disappear temporarily when they became too embarrassing for their families. "I'm not going anywhere," Beatrice said firmly. "This is my home too." "Only if you behave like part of this family," Robert shot back. "That means no more dramatic scenes, no defending insubordinate employees, and definitely no questioning our decisions." Beatrice looked at her father and stepmother, two people who should love her unconditionally, but clearly saw her as a problem to be solved. The pain in her chest was physical, as if someone was squeezing her heart with their hands. She ran inside the house, flew up the stairs 2 at a time, and locked herself in her room. There, alone among the expensive furniture she had never chosen and the artworks that did not understand her soul, Beatrice made a decision that would change her life forever. She opened her laptop and began to research. If Mary had been fired for defending her, she would make it a point to return the favor. She didn't know how yet, but she would find a way to help the only person who had shown the courage to stand by her side. As she typed, she unconsciously touched the navy blue coat still hanging on the chair beside her bed. It was more than just a piece of clothing. It was a symbol that someone, somewhere, believed she was worth fighting for. The war was declared. Even if Robert and Patricia didn't know it yet. Chapter 3. 3 weeks had passed since the party, and the mansion in Beverly Hills had returned to its usual silence, punctuated only by the sound of gardeners trimming the azaleas in the garden and the distant echo of traffic from Sunset Boulevard. Beatrice was developing a routine of voluntary seclusion, leaving her room only for mandatory meals, where conversations were minimal and laden with unspoken tension. It was a Tuesday morning when she finally gathered enough courage to execute the plan she had devised during her sleepless nights. Wearing dark jeans, a simple white t-shirt and sneakers, clothes that would go unnoticed in downtown, Beatrice left the mansion without telling anyone. For the first time in years, there was no chauffeur waiting for her with the luxury car. She called a rideshare service. The address she had found after days of discreet investigation led her to an apartment complex in East Los Angeles. The contrast with Beverly Hills was striking. 5-story buildings painted in faded colors, clothes hanging on balconies, children playing in common areas, and a constant flow of people on foot, carrying shopping bags or pushing strollers. Mary lived in apartment 304 of Building C. Beatrice climbed the concrete stairs, her hands trembling as she searched for the correct number. The hallway smelled of disinfectant and home-cooked meals, sounds of television and family conversations leaking under the doors. It was a world completely different from anything she knew. When she rang the doorbell, she heard footsteps approaching from the other side. A familiar voice asked, "Who is it?" before several locks were opened. Mary opened the door, wearing a simple t-shirt and jeans, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. Beatrice's expression shifted from curiosity to total shock upon seeing Mary standing in the hallway. "Oh my God, girl! What are you doing here?" Mary nervously glanced around, as if expecting to see security or Robert appear. "I need to talk to you," Beatrice said, her voice coming out more determined than she felt. "Please." Mary hesitated for a moment, then stepped aside to let her in. The apartment was small, but impeccably tidy. The living room had a 2-seater couch covered with a colorful crochet blanket, an old TV on a simple wooden stand, and on the walls, family photographs in cheap but well-kept frames. The smell of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the aroma of glycerin soap. "Sit here," Mary said, gesturing to the couch. "Would you like some coffee? Water?" "Coffee would be great," Beatrice replied, fascinated by the environment where every object had a story, a practical function. It was the absolute opposite of the mansion where she lived, filled with expensive decorative pieces but lacking soul. Mary returned from the kitchen with 2 cups of simple porcelain coffee, accompanied by homemade cookies on a small plate. She sat in the worn armchair across from the couch, studying Beatrice with a worried expression. "Does your father know you're here?" Mary asked directly. "No, and I hope you don't tell him," Beatrice said, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. "Mary, I'm so sorry for what happened. You were fired because of me." "Girl, I was fired because I chose to do what was right," Mary shook her head, "and I don't regret it one bit. You needed someone at that moment, and everyone there just ignored you. That's why I'm here." Beatrice took a deep breath. "I want to help you. Financially. Until you find another job, it's the least I can do." Mary fell, silent for a long moment, stirring her coffee with a small spoon. Through the living room window, children could be seen playing in the playground of the complex, their cheerful voices creating a soundtrack of simple yet authentic life. "Beatrice," Mary finally said, "can I ask you a question? Why did you really come here?" The question caught Beatrice off guard. She had rehearsed several answers during the trip, but the honesty in Mary's gaze made her drop all defenses. "Because you're the only person who ever stood up for me," Beatrice's voice faltered. "In my whole life, you're the only one who thought I was worth protecting, and now you've lost your job because of it, and I can't stop thinking that maybe you're struggling because of me." Mary got up and walked over to the couch, sitting next to Beatrice. "Sweetheart, do you want to know the truth? I worked in that house for 15 years, watching you grow up, seeing you shrink more and more, and I always wanted to do something. That night at the party, when I saw you lying on the floor and everyone looking at you with disgust or pity, I couldn't stay silent anymore. But now you're unemployed because of me," Beatrice insisted. "Child, I'm 52 years old, and I've been through much worse than being unemployed." Mary smiled tenderly. "You know what really hurts me? It's seeing a smart girl like you wasting her life because she thinks she's worth nothing." "It's not that I think," Beatrice murmured. "It's that everyone always tells me that. My father compares me to my dead sister. Patricia treats me like I'm an embarrassment. At school, in college, everywhere, I've always been Robert Smith's problematic daughter." Mary fell silent, watching tears stream down Beatrice's face. Then she did something unexpected. She opened a drawer of the side table and took out a yellowed envelope. "There's something you need to know," Mary said slowly. "Your mother was my friend." Beatrice looked up abruptly. "What?" "Helen and I studied education together at a local university over 30 years ago. We lost touch after she married your father. But when I saw the job announcement to work at the Smith mansion, I applied because I wanted to see my friend again." Mary paused, her own tears beginning to surface. "I arrived a month after she died." Beatrice's world stopped. Everything she thought she knew about her life, about the people around her, about her own story, was being rewritten at that moment. Did she talk about me?" Beatrice asked with a trembling voice. Mary opened the envelope and took out a faded photograph. It was Helen, young and radiant, holding a baby in her arms. On the back, it was written in delicate handwriting, "Beatrice, my little architect, you will build a better world." "Your mother always knew you would be special," Mary said, handing the photo to Beatrice. "She told me over the phone that you like to build little houses with blocks, that you designed blueprints for imaginary houses since you were 5. She said you had a huge heart and a brilliant mind." Beatrice held the photograph with trembling hands, as if it were the most precious thing in the world. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because it wasn't my place," Mary replied honestly. "I was an employee, but now we are just two women who care about each other, and I think you have the right to know who your mother really was, and who she believed you could become." They sat in silence for several minutes, only the sound of children playing outside filling the space. Beatrice studied every detail of the photograph. Her mother's genuine smile, the way she held the baby with so much love, the words of hope written on the back. "Mary," Beatrice finally said, "will you accept my financial help?" "Only if it comes with one condition," Mary replied. "What?" "That you accept my help too, not financial help," Mary hurried to clarify, "but help for you to discover who you really are. You stop living the life that others want you to live and start building your own." Beatrice looked around the simple apartment, at the brave woman sitting beside her, at the photograph of her mother in her hands. For the first time in years, she felt she was exactly where she was meant to be. "I accept," she said, and it felt like signing a contract with destiny. 1539, Chapter 4. In the weeks that followed, Beatrice developed a double life with the precision of a spy. In the mornings, she played the role of the obedient daughter in the Smith mansion, having breakfast in silence with Robert and Patricia, nodding along as they made plans for her life without consulting her. But in the afternoons, when she claimed to be going shopping or visiting non-existent friends, she took the subway to the Corinthians Itaquera station and walked to Mary's apartment. It was on a rainy April afternoon that they found themselves sitting at Mary's small kitchen table, surrounded by dozens of sheets of paper filled with architectural drawings. Beatrice had brought her secret projects, blueprints for sustainable, affordable housing that she sketched during sleepless nights when inspiration came like a breath of hope. "My God, girl," Mary murmured, adjusting the cheap reading glasses she had bought at the pharmacy to examine the details of the drawings. "This is the work of very intelligent people. Just look at this plan. It even has a rainwater harvesting system." Beatrice blushed with pleasure. It was the first time in years that someone praised her work genuinely, without the disguised condescension she was used to receiving. "It's just a hobby," she said, downplaying it as she always did. "Nothing too serious." "Nothing serious." Mary looked up from the drawings with a severe expression. "Beatrice, this could change the lives of hundreds of families. Beautiful, functional, And affordable homes. Have you calculated how much it would cost to build? Actually, yes. Beatrice pulled out a blue folder she had brought in her bag. I did a complete cost analysis. With sustainable materials and local labor, each unit would cost around $80,000, a third of the price of the affordable apartments my father builds. Mary was taken aback. And your father isn't interested in this? Beatrice's expression immediately closed off. My father thinks affordable housing isn't profitable enough. He prefers to focus on luxury developments. He always says that social architecture is NGO stuff. And you? What do you think? Mary's simple question echoed in the small kitchen like a challenge. Beatrice had never been asked about her own opinions, her own dreams. They always expected her to simply agree with others' visions. I think, Beatrice said slowly, choosing each word carefully, that everyone deserves a beautiful home, no matter how much money they have. And I think I could be really good at this. Mary smiled, one of those smiles that lights up the whole face. Now you're talking like the daughter of Helen I imagined. At that moment the doorbell rang. Mary frowned. She wasn't expecting visitors. She went to the door and returned with a tall, thin young man wearing a vocational school uniform and carrying a worn backpack. Beatrice, this is my youngest son, William. Welly, this is Beatrice. William was about 25, with intelligent eyes and a shy smile that resembled his mother's. He greeted Beatrice politely, but she noticed his surprise at seeing a clearly upper-class woman in his mother's kitchen. Sorry to interrupt, Mom. I came to pick up some tools I forgot here, he said, heading to a cabinet in the corner of the kitchen. William is finishing his technical course in civil engineering, Mary explained with evident pride. He has always been good with his hands. He used to build things since he was little. Beatrice looked at the drawings spread out on the table, then at William rummaging through the tools. An idea began to form in her mind. William, she called impulsively, do you understand these drawings? He approached the table and studied the plans attentively. Beatrice watched his eyes scan every detail, noticing how he mentally translated the drawings into real structures. Wow, this is very well thought out, he said after a minute. Especially this part about cross-ventilation, and this solar heating system is quite clever. He looked at Beatrice with renewed respect. Did you draw this? Yes, she replied, feeling a wave of pride. It's professional work. Are you an architect? I graduated, but I've never worked in the field, Beatrice admitted. William and Mary exchanged a glance. It was Mary who spoke first. Beatrice, can I ask you a crazy question? Sure. Why don't you try to put these projects into practice? The question caught Beatrice completely off guard. What do you mean? Well, you have the drawings. You have the knowledge, you have access to money. Mary gestured to the papers on the table. Why not build one of these houses for real, just to see if it works? Mom, it's not that simple, William gently interjected. You need land, permits, specialized labor. And what if you had all that? Mary asked, ignoring her son's practical objections. What if it were really possible? Beatrice felt her heart race. The idea was both terrifying and exhilarating. I wouldn't even know where to start. I would, William said simply. If you really want to try, I can help. I have classmates in the course who are up for extra work, and my professor knows suppliers who give discounts for social projects. But I don't have land, Beatrice pointed out the first practical difficulty. You do, Mary said mysteriously. Mother and son looked at her with curiosity. What do you mean, Mary? William asked. Mary got up and went to fetch a folder of documents from her room. When she returned, she placed a yellowed property deed on the table. When I came to Los Angeles, I worked for 10 years in a house of... before heading to her parents' mansion, Beatrice recalled the old patterns left to her as a small plot of land in a suburban area as an inheritance. She never knew what to do with it, but she always paid the property tax on time. Beatrice picked up the document with trembling hands. It was a 400-square-meter lot in an area being developed by the city. "Mary, this must be worth a fortune. You can't just lend it to me for an experiment." "Who said it's a loan?" Mary crossed her arms. "You help me financially until I get another job, and I'll help you achieve your dream. It's a partnership." "Mom," William tried to intervene, concerned. "Son, your mother may be getting older, but she's not getting foolish." Mary cut him off. "This girl has plenty of talent and money to invest. I have a piece of land that has been idle for years, and you have the technical knowledge. If we combine everything, it could turn into something great." The silence that followed was filled with possibilities. Beatrice looked at the document in her hands as if it were a treasure map. For the first time in her life, someone was offering her the chance to turn her dreams into reality. "What if it goes wrong?" she asked, revealing her deepest insecurities. "What if it goes right?" Mary countered. William pulled up a chair and sat at the table. "Look, if you guys are serious, I can do a preliminary budget. I have to present a final project for my course anyway. It could be this one." Beatrice looked at the two people in front of her. Mary, the brave woman who had risked her job to defend her, and William, a talented young man willing to bet on a crazy idea from three people who barely knew each other. "All right," she said, her voice gaining strength with each word. "Let's try." They shook hands over the kitchen table, sealing a partnership that would change all their lives forever. Chapter 5. 2 months later, the lot in the suburban area was buzzing with activity. What was once an empty lot covered in tall weeds and debris had transformed into the most organized construction site William had ever seen during his internships. Beatrice arrived every morning at 7 sharp, dressed in jeans, safety boots and a yellow hard hat, a radical transformation from the shy young woman he had met in Mary's kitchen. The first house of the project was taking shape. The eco-block walls were rising exactly according to the design Beatrice had created, and every functional detail proved to be even smarter in practice. The rainwater harvesting system, the handmade solar panels made from PET bottles, the cross-ventilation that kept the house cool even in the summer heat, everything was working perfectly. "Bea, come see this!" William shouted from the roof, using the affectionate nickname he had naturally adopted. "The solar heating system is working better than we expected." Beatrice climbed the wooden ladder, her hands now calloused from constant work. In the last 2 months, she had learned more about practical construction than in all her years at university. William had proven to be a patient and generous teacher, showing her everything from how to hold a hammer correctly to the secrets of perfect waterproofing. "The water is coming out at 45 degrees, he showed her the improvised thermometer, perfect for bathing, without spending a dime on electricity. Mary arrived at that moment, carrying a giant thermos and lunchboxes wrapped in dish towels. At 52, she had become the informal coordinator of the project, taking care of feeding the small team of 4 masons William had recruited from his vocational school classmates. "Guys, lunch," she announced, spreading a checkered tablecloth over 2 boards supported by sawhorses. It was an improvised table, but it gathered that small, chosen family every day at noon. While they ate the shepherd's pie that Mary had prepared, Beatrice obsessively checked the cost spreadsheets on her laptop. With every penny saved, with every creative solution they found, she felt more confident that they were on the right track. "Look at this," she said, showing the screen to the others. "If we keep this pace and these costs, we can build the house for $72,000, $8,000 less than we initially calculated." "Is that good?" asked Joshua, one of the masons, a 40-year-old black man who had become William's right-hand man on the site. "It's excellent," Beatrice replied. "It means we can offer quality homes at a price working families can afford." It was then that they heard the sound of a luxury SUV parking outside the lot. Beatrice immediately recognized the sound of the engine of the black BMW X6. Her stomach tightened. Robert Smith stepped out of the car, wearing a $3,000 grey suit, clearly out of place in the construction environment. His expression was a mix of anger, disappointment, and absolute shock at seeing his daughter in work clothes, her hands dirty with cement, sitting at an improvised table with people he considered lower class. "Beatrice!" His voice echoed through the sight like thunder. "What the hell are you doing here?" Everyone at the table froze. William instinctively stood up, ready to defend Beatrice if necessary. Mary remained seated, but her chin lifted with the dignity Robert knew well. "Hi, Dad," Beatrice said, forcing herself to keep her voice calm. "How did you find me?" "I hired a private investigator after I discovered you were lying about where you spent your afternoons." Robert approached the table, his Italian shoes sinking into the red dirt of the site. "Imagine my surprise when I found out my daughter is playing builder on an abandoned lot in the outskirts." "I'm not playing." Beatrice stood up, facing her father for the first time in her life. "I'm working." "Working?" Robert laughed bitterly. "Is this what you call work? Spending family money on a teenage fantasy?" "The money is mine," Beatrice retorted, firmly, "from my mother's inheritance." Robert's face went pale. Helen's inheritance was a delicate subject, a substantial amount he could not legally control, but had always hoped his daughter would use wisely. "Your mother left that money for you to have security in the future, not to waste on meaningless projects." "Meaningless projects?" Beatrice's voice rose an octave. "Dad, look around you. We are building a house that will cost less than half of the affordable apartments from your company and will be twice as efficient." Robert examined the construction for the first time, his experienced businessman's eyes automatically analyzing the quality of the work. Even against his will, he had to admit that the craftsmanship was impeccable. The lines were straight, the finishing careful, the technical details smart. "Who is supervising this?" he asked, addressing William directly, completely ignoring Beatrice. "I am, sir," William replied respectfully, but without being intimidated. "I am graduating in civil engineering from a vocational school, and all my colleagues here are qualified." Robert studied William from head to toe, clearly trying to find something to criticize. "And you think a technical course qualifies you to oversee architectural projects?" "Actually," Beatrice interjected before William could respond, "I design and he executes. It's called teamwork, Dad, a concept you should be familiar with." The irony in his daughter's voice made Robert even angrier. "Beatrice, you will stop this nonsense right now and go home. And you," he pointed at Mary, "should be ashamed of influencing a young woman with your grand ideas." Mary slowly stood up, facing Robert with the same courage she had shown at the party months ago. "Mr. Robert," she said firmly, "your daughter has more talent in her little finger than many famous architects I know, and more courage, too. The only thing she needs is someone who believes in her, something you clearly cannot do." The silence that followed was tense, as a high-tension wire about to snap. Robert looked at each person present. Mary, who was openly challenging him. William, who was protecting Beatrice with his body. The construction workers, who were observing the scene with respect for the boss who treated them as equals. And finally, Beatrice, his daughter, who for the first time in her life did not lower her eyes in the face of his anger. "If you do not go home right now," Robert said in a dangerously low voice, "you will be cut off from the family. No allowance, no future inheritance, nothing. You will see how hard it is to sustain these fantasies when you no longer have Daddy's money." Beatrice felt as if the ground was opening beneath her feet. It was the ultimatum she had always feared to hear. For a moment, the insecure girl living inside her screamed to accept, to return to the safety of the mansion and conformity. But then she looked at the house they were building, at the people who had believed in her, at the dream that was finally coming true. "All right," she said, her voice coming out stronger than she ever thought possible. "I choose to stay." Robert was shocked. Clearly he did not expect her to call his bluff. "You will regret this, Beatrice, and when you do, do not come to me for an apology." He turned and walked back to the car, his furious steps kicking up red dust. The luxury SUV roared away, leaving a cloud of smoke and a heavy silence. Beatrice remained still for a long moment, absorbing what had just happened. She had burned the last bridge with her family, but for the first time in her life, she felt completely free. Mary approached and placed a loving hand on her shoulder. "You did the right thing, my daughter." "I know," Beatrice replied, and for the first time, she truly knew. Chapter 6. 3 months after Robert's ultimatum, the first house was finally completed. It was a sunny Saturday morning when Beatrice, Mary and William gathered in the small front garden they had created with native plants and an integrated composting system. The 2-bedroom house shone under the Los Angeles sun, its walls painted in a soft shade of yellow that Beatrice had chosen to remind her of the colonial houses in a historic town. "I can't believe we did it," Beatrice murmured, holding the keys to the front door. Over the past few months, she had moved into a small rented apartment in a suburban area, using part of her mother's inheritance. It was a modest place, but she had transformed it into an improvised office, with plans for future projects pinned to the walls and models scattered everywhere. "Of course we did," William said, adjusting the sign they had installed at the entrance. "Dignified Housing Project. Sustainable Social Architecture." "You are the most determined person I have ever met, Bea." Mary watched the scene with tears in her eyes, remembering the fragile young woman she had found collapsed in the mansion's living room. That confident woman, with calloused hands and eyes shining with purpose, was the true Beatrice, who had always been hidden beneath layers of insecurity. That afternoon, they received their first interested family. Charles Smith, a 35-year-old metallurgist from a nearby industrial region, arrived with his wife Fern, a nurse, and their 2 small children, Gabe, 7, and Sophie, 5. They had found out about the project through word of mouth in the community. William had spread the news among his father's co-workers, who worked at a nearby factory. "How much does it cost again?" Charles asked, clearly nervous as he entered the house. It was evident that he had dressed up especially for the visit, wearing the dress shirt he only wore to weddings and graduations. $72,000, Beatrice replied. "It can be financed over up to 15 years, with a down payment of only $5,000. Fern squeezed her husband's hand tightly. It was exactly the amount they had. After working double shifts for the past 3 years, with her taking extra shifts at the hospital and him freelancing on weekends, they finally managed to save enough. "Is this room really going to stay like this? Without furniture?" asked Gabe, running through the empty house, his voice echoing off the clean walls. "The house comes like this, but look." Beatrice knelt down to the child's level. "Your mom and dad can decorate it however you like. And check this out," she pointed to the integrated USB outlets in the wall. "You can charge your tablet right from the wall." The boy's eyes lit up. William took the opportunity to explain to Charles the solar heating system and the rainwater harvesting system, while Mary showed Fern the vertical garden in the service area and the composting system in the backyard. "Does this mean our electricity bill will be lower?" Fern asked, clearly impressed. "Much lower," Mary confirmed. "And you can even sell the excess solar energy back to the utility company. It's like the house pays part of its own bills." Charles and Fern exchanged glances, a silent communication between couples who had dreamed together. For years, they had visited dozens of affordable apartments in recent months, all tiny, poorly ventilated, in buildings without green spaces for the kids to play. "Can we think about it until tomorrow?" Charles asked. "Of course," Beatrice said. "But can I ask a question? What do you think about living in a sustainable house?" "Look, Miss Beatrice," Charles scratched his head. "To be honest, I don't understand much about sustainability. But if it means saving money and having a good home to raise my kids, I'm in," Fern laughed. "Charles, didn't you see the backyard? The kids can plant, they can play in the dirt, they can have a dog. It's everything we've always wanted to give them." Sophie, who had been quiet until then, tugged at Beatrice's shirt. "Miss, can I have a room just for me?" "Yes, you can." Beatrice knelt down again. "And you know what else? You can choose the color of your bedroom walls." "Pink?" the girl asked, her eyes shining. "Pink, blue, green, yellow, any color you want." That night, Beatrice, Mary and William celebrated at a small pub near the lot. It was a simple place, with formica tables and cold beer served in plastic cups, but the joy they felt was more intense than any celebration at a five-star restaurant. "To our first family," William toasted, raising his cup. "To our first house sold," Mary added. "To the beginning of something bigger," Beatrice said, and they realized she was not just talking about the housing project. The following Monday, Charles called to confirm the purchase. Beatrice felt an emotion she had never experienced before. The satisfaction of seeing a dream come true for others. It wasn't just a sale, it was the confirmation that her vision worked in practice. But it was on Thursday of that week that they received an unexpected visit. Dr. Edward Miller, the respected investor who had been present at the fateful party, parked his luxury car in front of the lot. Beatrice recognized him immediately and felt her stomach tighten, remembering the humiliation of that night. "Miss Beatrice," he greeted politely, wearing a stylish but understated dark suit. "May I have a few minutes of your time?" They gathered in the small office they had set up in a converted shipping container on the lot. Dr. Edward examined the plans spread out on the table, the cost, spreadsheets, the photos of the construction progress, with the attention of someone who truly understood business. "I heard through mutual acquaintances that you sold the first unit," he said, after a few minutes of silent analysis. "We did," Beatrice confirmed, trying to keep her voice steady. "And do you have plans to expand?" The question caught everyone off guard. William and Mary looked at Beatrice, waiting for her reaction. "We do," she replied cautiously. "Why?" Dr. Edward smiled, a genuine smile that completely transformed his stern expression. "Because I'm impressed. In 40 years of real estate investing, I've rarely seen a project executed so well by such a young team, and I've never seen anyone manage to build with this quality at this price." He opened his Italian leather briefcase and pulled out a typewritten proposal. "I would like to finance the construction of 10 more houses. Same specifications, same quality, same business model. In exchange, I ask for a 25% stake in the profits." Beatrice looked at the document as if it were a winning lottery ticket. It was exactly the opportunity they needed to expand, but it also meant giving up part of the control of the project. "May I ask why you're interested?" she questioned. "For 2 reasons." Dr. Edward leaned back in the simple chair. "First, because it's a smart investment. You've created a sustainable business model that solves a real problem. Second," he paused, Because on the night of the party at your father's house, I saw a young woman fall and an entire elite turn their backs on her. But I also saw a brave woman defend her and a daughter choose to stand by that woman. That told me everything I needed to know about your character. The silence in the container was broken only by the distant sound of municipal infrastructure work on the street next door. Beatrice looked at Mary and William, her unlikely partners who had become her true family. "I accept," she said, extending her hand to Dr. Edward, "but with one condition. Mary and William are equal partners. Any major decision requires the approval of all three." Dr. Edward shook her hand firmly. "Deal." At that moment, Beatrice knew she had definitively crossed the line between dream and reality. Chapter 7. 6 months later, what had started as an empty lot in a suburban area had transformed into a small, planned community. 11 colourful houses sprawled across the larger lot that Dr. Edward had helped acquire, each with its flowering front garden and backyard garden. It was on a Monday morning. Beatrice walked through the gravel streets between the houses, observing the clothes hanging on the lines, listening to the sound of children playing in the backyards, and smelling the aroma of brewed coffee wafting through the open windows. Beatrice's personal transformation was as impressive as her physical one. She now wore her hair tied back in a practical ponytail, dressed in cargo pants and safety, boots with the ease of someone born for it. Her hands, once soft and always pampered in expensive salons, now bore honest calluses and short nails, the result of months working directly in construction. "Beer!" shouted Gabe, the son of Charles and Fern, running up to her with a drawing in hand. The boy had become something of a mascot for the small community, always hanging around the construction sites and making friends with all the new residents. "Look what I drew!" The paper showed a child's drawing of a yellow house with solar panels on the roof and a vegetable garden in the yard. In the sky, a smiling sun shone over the construction. "It's beautiful, Gabe. Is it your house?" Beatrice asked, kneeling to be at the boy's level. "Yes, and look," he pointed to small figures drawn next to the house. "This is my dad, this is my mum, this is Sophie, and this is me planting tomatoes with Grandma Mary." Beatrice smiled upon hearing Gabe refer to Mary as Grandma. It was a title she had naturally adopted with all the neighborhood children, becoming something of an unofficial matriarch of the small community they had created. That morning, they had an important meeting scheduled. Dr. Edward had arranged a meeting in the converted shipping container office with a group of investors interested in replicating the model in other regions of Los Angeles. It was the opportunity Beatrice had dreamed of, expanding the project to help hundreds of families. William arrived at the office carrying a folder full of documents and spreadsheets. At 26, he had become the most respected project manager in the area, with a waiting list of families wanting to hire him for renovations and small constructions. "Beer, did you see the numbers that Edward asked for?" he asked, organizing the papers on the table. "In 10 months, we built 11 houses, created 15 direct jobs, and saved 300,000 liters of water with the rainwater harvesting systems. And don't forget," added Mary, entering the container with a tray of coffee and homemade sweet bread, "that all families reported at least a 40% reduction in their electricity bills." Dr. Edward arrived promptly at 9 o'clock, accompanied by 3 businessmen whom Beatrice recognized from the economics pages of newspapers. There was also an elegant woman who introduced herself as Dr. Carmen Johnson, an architect specializing in affordable housing and a consultant for the federal government. "Gentlemen," Dr. Edward began after the introductions, "what you will see today is a business model that can revolutionize housing construction in the United States. Beatrice, would you like to present the numbers?" Beatrice took a deep breath. Months ago, the idea of speaking to a group of executives would have paralyzed her with anxiety. Now, With the confidence that came from concrete results, she felt steady. "Our proposal is simple," she began, pointing to the graph projected on the wall. "To build quality homes at a price that working families can afford, using sustainable technology that reduces operational costs." Dr. Ricardo Pacheco, one of the investors, interrupted. "Miss Smith, with all due respect, affordable housing projects have existed for decades. What makes yours different?" The question did not intimidate her. "Three main things, Dr. Pacheco. First, our construction cost is 40% lower than the market average while maintaining high quality. Second, our homes are energy efficient, resulting in real savings for families. Third, we create planned communities, not just isolated houses." William stood up to show photos of the neighborhood. "Each family has their private space, but we also have community areas. Playground, community garden, event space. This creates bonds between residents and reduces crime." Dr. Carmen leaned forward, clearly interested. "And what is the profit margin?" 15% net, Beatrice replied without hesitation. "Lower than luxury developments, but sustainable on a large scale. And most importantly, our profit comes from efficiency, not exploitation." Dr. Marcus Silvera, another investor, grimaced. 15%? My traditional developments yield at least 40. "But how many families do your developments serve?" Mary countered, surprising everyone with her direct question. "Because here we don't measure success just in money. We measure it in changed lives." Mary's comment created an uncomfortable silence. The investors exchanged glances, clearly unaccustomed to being questioned by a woman of humble origins in business meetings. Dr. Edward broke the silence. "Mary is right. This project has a social impact that goes beyond financial returns, and in the long run, that also translates into investment stability." Dr. Carmen consulted her notes. "Ms. Smith, would you be willing to participate in a pilot program from the federal government? We are looking for innovative, affordable housing models to replicate on a national scale." Beatrice felt her heart race. It was exactly the opportunity they had dreamed of. Of course, what would the format be? 50 houses in 5 different cities: Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, Miami, and Seattle. A 12-month deadline with technical supervision from the ministry and the possibility of future expansion. William and Mary exchanged excited glances. It was a proposal much larger than anything they had imagined. "What would our participation be?" Beatrice asked, maintaining professionalism despite her excitement. "You would be the main executors. You would provide the architectural model, supervise the construction, and train local teams. In return, you would receive 7% of the total program value." Dr. Pacheco flipped through the documents he had brought. "That represents approximately $2.5 million. It's not an insignificant amount." "More important than the money," Beatrice said, "it would be the opportunity to prove that our model works in different regions, with different climates and cultures." Dr. Carmen smiled. "Exactly what we wanted to hear. Can I count on an answer by the end of the week?" Beatrice looked at William and Mary, her loyal partners since the beginning of the journey. They nodded almost imperceptibly. "You can count on our answer." "Today," she said, "I accept." After the farewells and commitments to send contracts, Beatrice found herself alone in the converted shipping container with William and Mary. The silence that followed was loaded with meaning. "Do you realize what we just accepted?" William asked, still processing the magnitude of the agreement. "We just moved out of the amateur league," Beatrice replied, a smile growing on her face. "From now on, we are a serious company." Mary stood up and hugged the two young people. "Your mother would be very proud, my daughter." At that moment, Beatrice knew she had found not only her professional calling, but also her place in the world. And for the first time in her life, that place was exactly where she wanted to be. Continue 1550. Chapter 8. 8 months after signing the contract with the federal government, Beatrice was at the local airport, waiting for her flight to Miami, the last of the 5 cities in the pilot program that she still needed to visit in person. Sitting in the departure lounge, she flipped through an impressive report. 47 of the 50 houses had been completed on time, all within budget and with a resident satisfaction rate of 93%. The project had grown far beyond her initial expectations. They now had their own headquarters in Los Angeles, a team of 22 employees, and partnerships with universities studying their sustainable model. William had become the official technical director, coordinating construction teams in the 5 cities, while Mary had taken on the role of community relations director, a position created specifically for her natural ability to connect people. Beatrice's phone rang. It was William, calling from Porto Alegre, where he was supervising the delivery of the last units of the project. "Bea, you won't believe it." His voice sounded excited even through the crackling line. "The mayor here wants to order another 100 houses for next year, and it's not just him. I received 3 calls today from smaller city halls in Florida interested in the model." "That's fantastic, Welly," Beatrice smiled, using the affectionate nickname she had adopted. "But remember what we talked about regarding not growing too quickly?" I know. Quality over quantity. But Bea, we are really changing people's lives. You should see the family that moved in yesterday. This 8-year-old girl told me it's the first time she has her own room." Beatrice felt that familiar sensation of pride mixed with responsibility. Each family served represented not only a professional success, but real lives transformed. The flight was called. During the 2-hour flight to Miami, Beatrice used the time to review the reports from the Miami team, led by Carla Smith, a local architect in her 30s, who had embraced the project with contagious enthusiasm. Upon arriving in Miami, the humid heat of Florida enveloped her like a warm hug. Carla was waiting for her at the airport, a beautiful and energetic black woman with colorful braids and a smile that lit up any room. "Beatrice, so good to finally see you in person." Carla hugged her as if they were old friends. "You're going to love what we've accomplished here." The taxi took them to the neighborhood of Cajazeiras, where the set of 10 houses represented the adaptation of the model for the tropical climate. The buildings maintained the original sustainable structure, but had been modified to handle the high humidity and intense summer rains of Florida. "Look at these porches we added," Carla explained as they walked through the set. "You can't live here without a good porch, and see those larger windows? Cross-ventilation is a matter of survival in Miami." Beatrice watched in amazement as her original project had evolved, adapting to local needs without losing its essence. The houses were painted in vibrant colors: turquoise blue, sunflower yellow, sea green, reflecting the local culture and creating immediate visual joy. "And the rainwater harvesting system?" Beatrice asked. "Working perfectly. In fact, it works even better here than in Los Angeles, because it rains more. Mr. Jose's family managed to go 2 months without using city water during the summer, just with the rainwater. They stopped in front of house number 7, painted in a vibrant hot pink. A woman in her 40s appeared on the porch, drying her hands on an embroidered dish towel. "Miss Beatrice," she shouted with a strong Florida accent, "the woman who invented these blessed houses. Come in, come in." Sarah Johnson, an ironic name considering the situation, was a single mother of 3 children, worked as a cook in a restaurant in a historic district, and had managed to buy the house after years of saving every penny. Her joy in showing each room was contagious. "Look at this kitchen, girl," she gestured excitedly. "There's space for everything, and this solar cooker here, what a smart idea. I don't spend a dime on gas for lunch when the sun is strong." Sarah's 3 children came running. 14-year-old Ana Clara, responsible and serious, 10-year-old Miguel, mischievous and talkative, and little Yasmin, 6 years old, shy but curious. "Aunt Bea," Miguel said with the confidence of Florida kids, "my mom said you made our house. Is that true?" "I helped design it," Beatrice replied, kneeling to the boy's height. "But the ones who really built it were the workers here in Miami, with Aunt Carla coordinating." "And why did you want to make houses for poor people?" Ana Clara asked with teenage frankness. The question caught Beatrice off guard. After more than a year, speaking with investors, authorities and journalists, rarely did anyone get straight to the personal point of the matter. "Because," she said, choosing her words carefully, "I believe everyone deserves to have a beautiful and functional home. It doesn't matter how much money they have, and because I've discovered that I can make that happen." Sarah smiled, her eyes shining with emotion. "You know what excites me most about this house, Miss Beatrice? It's that my children don't feel ashamed to bring their friends here. Before, in our old little house in the suburban area, they made excuses not to invite anyone. Now, every weekend is a party here." That afternoon, Beatrice and Carla visited all 10 houses in the development. Each family had a story, and each adaptation of the original design told a narrative about how architecture could serve the real lives of people. There was Mr. Anthony, a retiree who had turned his backyard into a woodworking shop. The Smith family, who used their porch to sell shrimp stew on weekends, and Miss Lucy, who had created a small informal school in her backyard for the neighborhood children. That night, Carla took Beatrice to dinner at a simple restaurant in the historic district. Sitting at a small table, eating shrimp stew and drinking cold beer while listening to live music, the two talked about the future of the project. "Beatrice, can I ask you a personal question?" Carla said after the second glass of beer. "Of course. Don't you miss the life you had before, the life of luxury?" Beatrice laughed, a genuine laugh that came from deep within her chest. "Carla, I never truly had a life of luxury. I had the life of a prisoner in a gilded cage. Now I have a real life." "But your father, you never reconciled." The question touched on a wound that was still sensitive. Robert had tried to reach out a few times in the past months, especially after the project gained attention in the specialized media, but always through intermediaries, never directly, never acknowledging that he had been wrong. "My father still thinks I'm going through a rebellious phase that will pass," Beatrice said, absent-mindedly stirring the shrimp on her plate. "He can't understand that this isn't rebellion. It's who I really am." "And if he sought you out? If he asked to come back to the company?" Beatrice looked at the movement of people passing on the historic street, tourists mixed with locals, music coming from the bars, life pulsing at every corner. "I would say he is welcome to see my work," she replied, "but that I will never again live the life that others planned for me." That night, lying in her simple but comfortable hotel room, Beatrice video called William and Mary. They were in the office in Los Angeles, working late on a proposal to expand the model to the Northeast. "How was Miami?" Mary asked, her image pixelated by the unstable connection. "Perfect," Beatrice replied. "Each house is a small victory, and Carla is doing an amazing job there." "Bea," William said, "we received an interesting proposal today. A German sustainable construction company wants to partner with us to export our model." "Really?" Beatrice perked up. "Where to?" "Africa. They want to adapt our techniques for developing countries." The idea was both exciting and frightening. In just 2 years, they had gone from 3 people building a house on a vacant lot to an internationally consulted company. "Let's talk when I get back," she said. "But be honest with me. Do you think we're ready for something like this?" Mary and William exchanged glances on the screen, then smiled simultaneously. "Beatrice," Mary said with a maternal tone, "you're ready for anything you decide to do, and we'll be by your side no matter what." Hanging up the call, Beatrice spent a few minutes looking out the hotel window at the lights of Miami. Tomorrow, she would return to Los Angeles, to the company she had created, to the life she had chosen to build with her own hands. It was a life very different from the one Robert had planned for her, but it was completely, authentically hers. Continue 1553, Chapter 9. It was a cold July morning in Los Angeles when Beatrice received a phone call that would change everything. She was in the office of her company, now located in a renovated commercial building in a wealthy neighborhood, reviewing the contracts for the German partnership when the secretary announced an urgent call. "Beatrice." The voice on the other end was hesitant, laden with a vulnerability she had never heard before. It's Dad." Beatrice felt her heart race. It had been 2.5 years without direct contact between them, only communications through lawyers about bureaucratic matters regarding her mother's inheritance. "Dad," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady, "I need to talk to you. In person. It's important." There was something different in Robert's tone. The authoritarian arrogance had been replaced by something that sounded dangerously close to desperation. "About what?" "The company is going through difficulties, and I need your help." The words came out like a painful confession. Robert Smith, the real estate mogul who had built an empire, was asking for help from the daughter he had publicly rejected. Beatrice closed her eyes, remembering their last conversation at the construction site, the cruel words about teenage fantasies and the threat to completely disown her. "Where do you want to meet?" she finally asked. "Can we have lunch? At that Italian restaurant in the wealthy neighborhood that your mother liked?" The mention of Helen was a low blow, but Beatrice realized it wasn't calculated. Robert seemed genuinely lost. "Okay, 1 o'clock. The high-end restaurant was as busy as ever, executives closing deals over plates of handmade pasta and expensive wines. Beatrice arrived wearing navy dress pants and a white blazer, her current professional look, elegant but practical, expensive but not ostentatious. Very different from the party clothes she used to wear at family social events. Robert was already at the table, and Beatrice was shocked by his appearance. The imposing man from 2 years ago had aged a decade. His hair was in the bright morning of December, exactly 3 years after the party that had changed her life forever. Beatrice found herself in the same hall of the Smith mansion, but this time the circumstances were completely different. The house no longer belonged to the Smith family. It had been sold to cover the company's debts, and the event was not a celebration of the elite, but a simple ceremony to mark the inauguration of the most ambitious housing project ever undertaken in the United States. The main hall had been transformed into an improvised meeting room. Instead of bohemian crystal chandeliers, portable solar panels provided clean energy for the presentation equipment, where imported wines once flowed, reusable water bottles and organic coffee were served to the guests. More importantly, instead of the exclusive elite of 3 years ago, families from all social classes, architects committed to affordable housing, representatives from NGOs, and government officials genuinely interested in effective public policies were present. Beatrice watched the transformation of the space with a profound sense of satisfaction. She now wore a simple yet elegant navy blue dress made by a cooperative of seamstresses from her community. In a suburban area that had benefited from one of the community projects of the company, William held a report in his hands, still calloused from direct work in construction, representing 3 years of hard work. 350 houses built in 12 states, 1,400 families directly benefited, 2,800 jobs created, and an average 60% reduction in energy consumption of the residences. "Everyone, may I have your attention?" announced William, now the executive director of Smith Social Projects, the name they had given to the restructured company. At 29, he had become a national reference in sustainable construction, a speaker at universities, and a consultant for housing projects in other countries in Latin America. Mary approached the small makeshift stage, wearing an aqua-green business suit she had bought especially for the occasion. At 55, she was now the Director of Community Development and had just received the honorary citizenship title from the City of Los Angeles for her services to low-income families. "Before we begin the official presentation," Mary said into the microphone, her voice firm and clear, "I would like to tell you how all of this started. 3 years ago, in this very room, a young woman fell and spilled wine on her dress. Everyone laughed. Everyone turned their backs. Everyone pretended not to see, except me. A low murmur ran through the hall. Many present knew the story, which had become almost legendary in social architecture circles, but hearing it told by Mary in the exact place where it all began had a powerful emotional impact. That young woman," Mary continued, proudly pointing to Beatrice, "was Beatrice. And what no one in that room knew was that she had a head full of dreams and a heart full of desire to help people. She just needed someone to believe in her." Beatrice felt tears welling up. Even after all these years, her gratitude for Mary remained intact and grew each day. Dr. Edward Miller, now the official investor partner of the company and one of the biggest advocates for the sustainable housing model in the country, stood up to speak. "What you will see today," he said, "is the result of a simple philosophy. Architecture is not about impressing rich people, it's about improving the lives of ordinary people. And when you do that right, financial success comes as a consequence, not as a goal." The presentation began with a documentary video produced by a local university about the project. Aerial images showed housing developments spread across the country, colorful houses in Miami, buildings adapted for the cold in Portland, projects modified for the dry climate of the northeastern region. But the most impactful were the testimonials from families. Children explaining how rainwater harvesting worked, parents talking about the reduction in their energy bills, mothers proudly showing their gardens in their backyards. "The project," Beatrice explained when the video ended, "has evolved far beyond what we initially imagined. We didn't just build houses, we created a replicable model of sustainable community development." William activated the projector and displayed a map of the United States filled with colorful dots. Each dot represents a completed or ongoing project. Green for completed projects, blue for construction underway, yellow for approved projects awaiting the start of construction. The map was impressive. Colorful dots spread across almost all states, with a higher concentration in Los Angeles, New York, and Florida, but with a significant presence in the Midwest and South. "Our goal for the next 5 years," Beatrice continued, "is to reach 1,000 houses built and 50 community projects. But more important than the numbers is the philosophy. Each project must be adapted to the local reality, must generate jobs for local residents, and must be genuinely sustainable." Dr. Carmen Johnson, who had become a loyal ally of the project since the first government contract, raised her hand. "Beatrice, can you tell us about the international partnership that was announced last week?" Beatrice smiled. The partnership with the German company Grünhaus had finally been formalized, paving the way to take the Brazilian model to Africa and Asia. "In March of next year, we will start a pilot project in Senegal," she replied. 50 houses adapted to the African tropical climate, using local construction techniques combined with our sustainable technology. A young journalist raised his hand. And what was the role of the merger with your father's company in this growth? It was a question Beatrice knew would come. The merger had been widely reported in the specialized media, generating much debate about family and business dynamics. The merger brought resources and structure that allowed us to grow faster, she replied diplomatically. But the most important thing was that it gave us the opportunity to transform a traditional real estate company into a force for positive social change. William added, and it's worth noting that all employees from the former Smith company were reassigned to the new projects. No one lost their job because of the merger. At that moment, a familiar figure appeared at the entrance of the hall. Robert Smith, at 68 years old, walked with an elegant cane, a result of hip surgery performed a few months earlier. He wore a simple suit, very different from the ostentation of previous years, and his eyes immediately searched for Beatrice. She waved to him, indicating an empty chair in the front row. Robert sat down quietly, clearly emotional to be in that environment where everything had begun so traumatically. The ceremony continued with the presentation of certificates to the pioneering families of the project, those who had believed in the proposal when it was still just a dream of 3 determined people. Charles Smith and his family were present, his children now older and more articulate, Gabe at 14 and Sophie at 12, both helping younger residents understand the sustainable systems of the houses. "Mrs. Beatrice," Charles said into the microphone when he was called to receive, "your certificate. When we bought our house 3 years ago, we thought we were just buying a place to live, but we discovered that we were buying much more than that. We were buying a better future for our children." Fern, your wife, added, "And we found out that we are part of a community that cares for one another. That is priceless." As the ceremony approached its end, Beatrice felt a mix of nostalgia and anticipation. She looked around the hall, seeing familiar and new faces, people who had supported the project from the beginning and others who had joined along the way. Mary stepped up to the microphone for the final words. "3 years ago, in this very room, I said that a stain on a dress does not define anyone's character, but people's reactions to seeing it do. Today, I want to add something. Character is also defined by what we do when no one is watching, when there are no spotlights, when the work is just work." She looked directly at Beatrice. "And I can proudly say that this girl, who has become a beautiful and strong woman, has the most beautiful character I have ever seen. Not because she built houses, but because she built dreams. Not because she became wealthy, but because she enriched the lives of others." Applause echoed through the hall, but Beatrice could hardly hear it. She was reflecting on the journey she had taken, from the insecure young woman who had fallen on that same floor 3 years earlier, to the confident businesswoman now leading a national movement for social architecture. After the guests began to disperse, Robert approached her. Father and daughter stood face to face in the nearly empty hall, echoes of lively conversations still bouncing off the walls. "Beatrice," he said, his voice heavy with emotion, "your mother would be very, very proud." "I know," she replied, hugging her father for the first time in almost 4 years. "And I am proud of both of us, of what we were, what we have become, and what we can still build together." Robert held his daughter's face in his hands, just as he did when she was little. "I'm sorry it took me so long to see who you really are." "Apology accepted," Beatrice said, "but now it's time to stop looking back. We have a lot of work ahead of us." As the sun set over Los Angeles, painting the sky in golden hues that streamed through the hall's windows, Beatrice knew this was not an ending, but a new beginning. The project had grown far beyond her initial expectations, but the fundamental dream remained the same: to prove that architecture can be a transformative force in society. And in that moment, looking around the hall where everything had started with a fall and a wine stain, She knew with absolute certainty that she had found her place in the world, a place built with her own hands, her own dreams, and the support of those who truly believed in her. The true wealth, she had discovered, was not in impressing people at lavish parties, but in building something that would last beyond her own life, something that made a real difference in the world.